appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. The thing that struck me the most, of course, is this sense that, it's not substitution, it's participation. Christ, who is the firstborn from the dead, the first in so many ways, that we then follow him. So he's made a way, and then we walk the way. And so we live the life of Christ, meaning we do the things that he did and live the way that he lived. And then this ultimate thing that St. Paul says here, that we present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. This, of course, is a very well-known verse in the scriptures. And I think in a lot of ways it gets kind of evacuated of meaning because of the way that worship is understood here in modern America as meaning any kind of religious feeling thing that you do. Obviously, singing songs is called worship, hearing sermons is called worship, but I've even heard, getting together with a group of friends and having a beer at a restaurant called worship. What does that word mean in all those contexts? Well, it means we got together and felt religious, whatever that means exactly. And so, when you say then, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, that means nothing if sacrifice doesn't have any positive content. Spiritual worship, it doesn't have any positive content, just means getting together and feeling religious or something like that. One of the problems that we have in the modern world is that a lot of times we've taken these words that do have a literal sense, and then there's a metaphorical sense, which is perfectly good, but we've forgotten the literal sense and we keep only the metaphorical sense. This verse is talking about human beings being a sacrifice in a metaphorical sense. That this is spiritual worship in a metaphorical sense. Now, metaphorical does not mean unreal, because the literal sense of our bodies being a sacrifice would mean that we are being killed and put on altars and burnt before God. That is what a sacrifice is. It's about foodstuffs being put on an altar and burned up to God. I mean, read Leviticus. That's not what St. Paul is advocating here. And he clues us in. He says, a living sacrifice. So he's saying, hey, I'm using a metaphor here, you guys. So what can we take away from that metaphor then? Understand the literal so that the metaphorical makes sense. So a sacrifice in the literal sense is this food that is put in front of your God as a shared meal with your God, and it's unitive between you and your God. It's this offering of hospitality to your God, and you are connected. So if we understand that that's what it is a shared meal with your God, when he says offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, and it has these same purposes, then that means that the way that we live should function as a unifying movement between not just us and God, but also between each other. That the way that we live ought to bind the Christian community together, because that's what sacrifices do. The way that we live should be a hospitality that invites people in and makes them part of our community. The reason why we can do this and it's effective is because Christ has done it and he's doing it in us. This is why we say Christ is in our midst. He's not just in our midst so that we have this presence. He's in our midst to enliven us to live his life in this world, to be in the world but not of the world. And the point is, Christ did not come to condemn the world but to save it. We are here living the life of Christ, not to condemn the world, but to save it. This language of living sacrifice is actually much more potent when we understand what the sacrifice of Christ is, and we understand more broadly what sacrifices are. Bringing all of that together, then that should invigorate us so we have a clear vision of what this Christian life is. And then having that vision, then to live it in such a way that passes on that vision to other people, but most especially invites them in, so that our act of love is joined to what Christ did and is doing and continues to do in us, through us, in his saints, through his saints. And that's the way that this cleanses the whole world. Just as he sent out the apostles as he was about to ascend into heaven, he has also sent us out. Now, we may not all be preachers. We may not all be called to baptize, but we are all called to participate in that Great Commission. And the way that all of us are called to participate in that Great Commission is to love one another. Christ said, "By this will all men know that you are my disciples, that you have love for one another." This is a powerful, powerful thing. I think especially here in 2025, where we know that people feel more and more isolated, people feel more and more alone. There is a real meaning crisis that has occurred. People are looking for meaning. Well, meaning is not just something that lands like in your head. It's a life that you live. You can become convinced of a truth, okay, but you got to live somewhere. And what is it that we have as the church? We have the life. We have the way. We have the truth. We have the life, Christ himself. And so as we look upon the cross, as we look upon the suffering of Christ, I mean, this is part of why we timed this episode for right now, because we're about to enter into that suffering in a ritual, liturgical way. Let it transform you. To the extent that you're able at this point in your life, let it transform you so that when we sing that line, "Glory to thy long suffering, O Christ," that we are there and joining our suffering to his suffering, joining our love to his love, joining our sacrifice to his sacrifice, for the life of the world and for its salvation.